being the first presenter is always a difficult thing, you know, because people are still settling down. Physically you have, but mentally there are still a lot of things which are bothering you. Something happening back in office, somebody was supposed to come, will my secretary inform him or her? So many things going on. So I hope by the end of my talk, things would be settled down. And let me start with we all know that dogs have breeds, you know. Dogs have pedigrees and breeds, right? Yeah? Yes or no? Same way professionals also have pedigree and breeds. You know, some are MNC professionals, some are large company professionals, some are small and medium-sized company professionals, some are IT professionals. And I am pretty happy to announce that I am a mixed breed. You know, it's not good, you know, when we talk of the other kind, mixed breed is not good. But I am very proud that I am a mixed breed because I have had the opportunity in my 25 years of career to work with various kinds of organization. I started my career with a manufacturing firm called Eicher. I was there for around 4 years in that. Then I moved to advertising industry. I was with a small and medium Indian advertising agency for around 5 years. And with a large multinational ad agency for another 2 years. Then I moved into IT industry, working largely with large multinationals for almost 6 years. And then I started on my own. For 5 years I was consulting in HR. And I had 16 clients across multiple industries. Again, I had the biggies like GE as my customer, Petronet, LNG as my client. And on the other hand, I had small business, Indian business like Barbecue Nation as my client, and so on. So I had a very enriching experience during that time. And then eventually came back to the corporate sector for last almost 3 years. I am with this company called Model N, heading their HR for the India operations. So I am able to kind of step into various kinds of shoes, all kinds of shoes that are sitting here today, the owner's shoes. I was an entrepreneur myself, or a professional shoes trying to attract and retain talent and so on. So I hope that I'll be able to address a lot of questions that you have in mind proactively, and I would try and leave around 5 odd minutes at the end of my session where we can possibly take some of your questions. So let me start with asking a very simple question. It's a very simple question. I'm sure all of you would be able to answer it. What's common between Shakuni and Lord Hanuman? Shakuni from Mahabharata and Lord Hanuman. Both are loyal, okay? Difficult to find similarities, right? Between there are two ends of spectrum, right? Shakuni and Lord Hanuman, you know. But they had one thing which is quite common. They used their uniqueness to their advantage. They used their uniqueness as a weapon to defeat their enemies. Shakuni was very good at gambling, all right? He was the best. And he used that to defeat the very powerful Pandavas. Otherwise, it was near impossible. And then what happened is history. Same way, if you look at Lord Hanuman, his tail. Just imagine, using a tail for a weapon. He used it. His tail on fire. Ravana thought that he punished Lord Hanuman, but actually punishment was coming his way. Right? He just used his tail on fire to burn the entire Lanka, the powerful Lanka. So it's a no-brainer when it comes to attracting and retaining talent that is all about brand and money. And we all face it day in, day out, isn't it? People get attracted either for brand, they would want to go and work with companies like Tata's or Google's or Microsoft's of the world, or they don't mind working with some startups who are willing to pay very fat paychecks to them. So it seems that it's all about brand and money. But then let's not forget that we have a big strength, which typically in our mind we take for a weakness. And that strength is a size. We are still in a bracket where we are small, we are agile, we are nimble, and we can actually leverage that to our advantage. And today I'm going to talk how we can do it. I won't call them mantras, but I'll possibly share with you 5 small ideas which can make a lot of difference. And to be very honest, I'm not too worried about their implementation. Why? Because immediately after me, we have a motivational speaker who would motivate you to implement those ideas that I'm giving you. Okay, so I'll just stay focused on the ideas and then leave it to Ajay, right? Ajay to take it over and motivate you to implement those ideas. Are you guys with me so far? Can I dive deep into these ideas now? All right. Okay, so first one is to listen and share. See, when we grow large as an organization, we lose this ability to stay in touch with our people. We try, but then those means are all very kind of, what would I say, distant means. As small organizations, we have this unique capability, this unique strength of actually maintaining that personal contact with our employees. We can spend a lot of our time in talking to them, listening to them, in figuring out as to what they are looking for. And most times, their requests, their demands, their aspirations are not very complicated. They are very simple. It's not very difficult for us to meet them. Most of them, to be very honest, are hygiene factors. Those are some things which, if not there, would demotivate them, but if there, it will just make their life easy. And providing for those is not difficult. It's easy, it doesn't take too much money or time. But the important thing is to establish that connect, our ability to constantly talk to them, establish that personal relationship with them. They have a lot of ideas to share. The youngsters that we hire, they have a lot of ideas. We tend to get into that mode of assuming that they don't have experience, they still have to figure out the complexities of the business, and they're possibly not capable of thinking. That's not true. Actually, today's generation has brilliant ideas, and we can actually leverage a lot of it if we were to listen to them. So I was looking at the slides that were running in the background, and I relate with that entrepreneurs, small businesses, we are dealing with so many issues, right from financial issues to quality issues, production issues, supply issues, and so on. But finding this little time to connect will go a long way. It will make all the difference. You will get wonderful ideas from these people, and they will feel a part of your organization. They will feel valued, they will feel substantial. The second part of the same thing is to share. It's very important to be open and honest about how we are doing as an organization. As a large organization, once you are listed, you don't have an option, right? You have to publish everything. Even some of the senior people's salaries you have to publish, right? But when we are small, I don't know why we get into this tendency of keeping things hidden from our people. I had one of my clients in Kolkata, I'm not going to name it, of course, and the owner of that would, in every meeting, in all hands meeting, in the town hall meetings, would try and project that the company is going through a very tough phase, very bad phase. We are not making enough profits, and we want to work hard. Whereas, being a consultant, I knew that's not the true story. I had the peep into their books, and I knew that they are making reasonable, handsome profits. But then, somewhere this belief was there that I talked to that person and I said, "So why do you do it all the time? Why do you always project that, it's tough times and you're going through bad phase?" He said, "See, two things, I want them to be austere in their approach. So when they are traveling, they should stay in, not the best of the hotels, in the average kind of hotels, not spend too much money. And last but not the least, most importantly, come April, they should not ask me of a lot of raise. The only way to kind of avoid that is to keep projecting this image. I said, sorry, sir. Actually, you are doing a lot of harm to your business. Because who would want to stay in a business which is loss-making business, which is struggling to survive? On the contrary, I'll share another incident with you. You know, this was a scion of one of big industry houses. And again, I'm not going to name him. When his father died, left the business in a very bad shape. He hardly had any money. He was surviving on loans. But he made it a point to travel business class all the time. He would borrow money to fly business class. Why? Because if he doesn't, then the kind of message that goes out to others is that the company is not doing well, and he would not want to project the company that way. So it's very important for us to make sure that our employees, our people, they understand that our company is doing well, and they would want to stick on and grow their careers with a growing company. So that's idea one. Second is, if you look at the large organizations, they are kind of stuck in a web of structure. Because some consultant, they have a lot of money to spend on consultants, so they will call a Hewitt or a Mercer or somebody, and the first thing that these guys are going to tell them is job evaluation, job structuring, and ladders, and this and that, right? And it forms silos where people are stuck with their functions. If there's a particular guy who's a software developer, he would only do software development, and that is all that he or she is supposed to do. As small organizations, we can leverage the power of job crafting. And trust me, you can get so much more from your employees by allowing them to do things beyond what they are just supposed to do. Third, invest in their training. That is something that gets pushed, not just in small organizations, even in large organizations, to the back burner. Things are changing very fast. Technology is changing, systems and processes are changing, policies are changing, basic skills are changing. And if we want our people to stay ahead of the curve, it is in our own interest as business owners to invest in their training. At times, as I said, it is due to lack of time that we are unable to devote to this particular important aspect. At times, we fear that it will be very expensive. And there are times when we think people don't have time for this because they're so busy doing whatever they have to do. Where do they have time? But in this race of talent, I think it is very important for us to make a conscious call to invest in their training, to make them stay ahead of the curve. It's not a big thing. It's just about some budgeting. We budget for various things. Let's budget formally for training, both in terms of their time and your resources. And I'm giving you a very simple formula. Just put 4 to 5% of their time on training. Make it a mandatory thing in your organization. Saying, okay, everybody has to spend 4 to 5% of their time in training. What does that mean? What does that translate to? It only translates to possibly 10 to 12 days in a year. It's not a huge thing. It's not going to make a huge impact. But the kind of motivation it's going to create for the people is humongous. Second, you are helping them contribute to their business, to your business better. In terms of money, maybe just 1% of your revenue. It's not a huge sum, right? Just now we saw about CSR. Government is asking us to put some 1%, 2% of our profit or revenue into CSR. Now, that we will do because that's mandated by law. Same way, here it's not mandated by law, but if we just budget that 1% of our revenue towards training, that will make a lot of difference. That will ensure, as I said, that you get, even if you are unable to get the best of the talent from the market, you create and manufacture your own talent. You give them the inputs, the kind of inputs that your business needs. You give them the kind of input which will help them grow. And trust me, people are looking forward to such organizations who can help them grow, help them acquire new skills. So that way you will be able to attract and also retain good talent. Number 4. Once we have done these 3 things, I think in absence of this, it's not going to work. But yes, if we have done the first 3 things, that is, 1, we have really listened to them carefully and we have tried to change our ways or bring in systems and structures and policies to meet their requirements. That creates a lot of engagement. We have allowed job crafting. We have allowed them to just break the shackles, come out and do more for the organization. And third, we have invested in their training. That means that we have already created a core which is very engaged. And now you unleash this power to the external world. They become your brand ambassadors. And the 4th idea that I'm giving is to leverage the power of internet, the power of social media to become a talent magnet. You are not going to do anything. Now your people, they will do everything. You just need to encourage them to get on to, they are already there, by the way, you know, they are already on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, everywhere. It is only encouraging them to talk a little more about the organization, what kind of things that we are doing. If there is an open position somewhere in the organization, they talk about it on the social media, and that word spreads. And trust me, when a peer calls another peer from outside, that call is much more powerful than any ad, be it online or print or anything. When I say, hey, come, there's a great organization that I work for, and we have this vacancy, that call is much more powerful because there's a trust, there is a sense of faith in that call. We can, of course, invest in a good employer referral program because at the end of it, people do need to be recognized, and there's no better way to recognize them but for a referral program. I'm not saying give them money, that's not necessary, but you can figure out your own ways in terms of how you want to motivate them, how do you want to reward them so that they do it without any concerns or issues, right? They are freely reaching out. And not just limited to the, to the recruitment, but as I said, can they be your brand ambassadors when it comes to your products, your services, for anything. Their network will really help you expand. Last but not the least, this is the 5th thing I'm going to talk about, is the power of collaboration. We are all competing with each other in the talent market. But in that thought process, we forget that there's a power of collaboration. I'll give you another very simple example from the airlines industry. They're all fighting for seats, right? For the occupancy. It's a stiff competition. And given that kind of competition, could any one of us think that an alliance is possible? Where 5 or 6 airlines, they come together and get into this seat sharing formula, where they are not fighting for the seats, but now they are actually putting all the seats together and trying to offer the best seats to their customers, depending on what they are looking for. Earlier, if I'm flying Lufthansa and I'm a business class passenger, and if the business class is full, I didn't have an option. I don't want to fly any other airlines. So I either change my program or do something else. But suddenly the entire game changed. Suddenly, I just need to book myself in Lufthansa as a business flyer, and then they will find out where the seat is, and they will give the seat to me. So can we collaborate? Can we create a kind of an ecosystem? And I think SMB Connect can do wonders when it comes to these kind of things, where we can kind of come together and collaborate on various aspects, not just when it comes to the legal aspects or things like that, but even from a talent perspective. Can we really collaborate? Think about it. It's very difficult for us to release an ad in the paper. It's a very expensive medium, right? But let's say 5 of us come together who are actually not competing from the product perspective or the services perspective, could be only competing from a talent perspective. All of us, let's say, are hiring a particular kind of skill. Can we come together, 5 of us, and release the ad? Do a joint job fair where all the people are coming in and we are interviewing and we are selecting them together and then accordingly identifying people in terms of who we want and who we can afford. We can have no poaching agreements between ourselves. We can make sure that we don't kind of create artificial pressures on us to retain the talent, because the company next door, who could be my collaborator, is a competitor for talent, and these guys are all getting out every day, getting to a pan shop or a chai shop or something, and people are being poached from there. That threat suddenly goes away because now I'm collaborating for the talent. So it is actually not very difficult. It is a paradigm shift that is required. And if we have to succeed as small businesses and eventually grow big, we need to come together to make such things happen. Thank you so much for being a lovely audience. And you can stay in touch with me over LinkedIn.